PSA for all listeners. My name is Alvin Glenford. I'm one of the hosts of Public Sports Announcements, where we discuss, debate, and update our fans on the most relevant sports topics of the day. PSA is fun, young, and most importantly, we know our sports. Come listen to our episodes. They drop every Thursday, and you can listen to us on Go Defy Life and SoundCloud. You will be hearing more from us this Thursday.
The following podcast is being brought to you by the Defy Life Podcast Network.
The most valuable commodity I know of is information. Wouldn't you agree?
Hello, Hotel. This is Brother Kemet. We're coming at you with another episode of Black Gumbo. We're in the month of January 2019, and we're on the heels of the Martin Luther King holiday weekend. Guess what? We don't have to stir up the pot tonight because we already know we're going to be talking about our brother Martin Luther King. But for some of y'all who may not know, Brother King wasn't always Martin Luther. His birth name was Michael King Jr., and he was named after his father, Michael King Sr. And what took place was when Martin Luther King, with Michael King Sr., he was the head of Ebenezer Baptist Church, which was, I think, founded by his grandfather on his mother's side. And the father ended up taking over. Michael King Sr. took over, and he went on a trip. And this trip took him to Egypt, Jerusalem, Bethlehem, and Berlin. And at that particular time period, this was back in 1957, Brother Michael ran into the information about the German monk and theologian named Martin Luther. And for those of you who are not familiar with Martin Luther was pretty much what caused the Protestant Reformation that took place in several centuries ago, with the changing of the guard with I guess Catholicism, where they kind of broke off, where kind of what we see sometimes, where we see one side decide that, hey, you know, we don't like the way you guys are doing this, and they kind of part ways and do the things that they feel are the best and more right. So anyway, nobody knows for 100% sure was this just the inspiration that made him change his name. But when young King was 5 years old, his father changed both of their names to Martin Luther King instead of Michael King. They changed both of their names. Now, I don't know whether it was done legally or they just took on the name back at that time, but we know and we love our brother Martin Luther King. So, you know, we're great. It sounds real great. The brother has over 730 streets named after him in the U.S. So that name ring bell no matter where you go. Somewhere you're going to be close to a Martin Luther King Boulevard, because they almost in just about, you know, every city. Well, just about in every city. But here's a little bit backdrop. Every year we hear about Martin Luther King, but we pretty much hear the same stuff. We understand and we are grateful for what the brother did. I mean, truly grateful for what the brother did, and I think everybody understands the impact that he had on not just us here in America, but in the diaspora. I mean, you know, this brother was tremendous, but, you know, check this out. From even his childhood, he showed great promise. Brother King graduated high school at age 15. That's when he entered college. He went to Morehouse College, and this brother received a bachelor's of divinity, and he also has a PhD in systematic theology. I mean, so King was somebody that was really, really smart, but as a young child, he was real sensitive, and these were a tribute to some of the tragedies that he had in his life, and also a tribute to why he was so compelled to come to our aid, and I'm talking about, black people here in America, when he saw the injustices, and not just saw them, he lived them, he felt them. And as a child, one of his early attempts at suicide was because of the pressures of racism. And I can't even imagine, at that time, what people went through. I see now today, we have plenty of racism, we have enough, I have a share, but back then, I mean, the law didn't just kill black people, they ignored us also, back then. So people had a free fall, they could do whatever they want to us, and we didn't protect ourselves. It could, even if we protect ourselves, they still would do what they want with us. But anyway, when Brother King, because of that, one of his tragedies he had is when his grandmother passed. She died of a heart attack, and he was around 12 or 13. And brother jumped out of second story window. He was so grief stricken because him and his grandmother was, really close, and he was grief stricken. But the brother survived, and we're glad he survived, because if he wouldn't, we wouldn't have heard about him. And the brother went on to do these super wonderful things. And one of the other things that a lot of people don't really know is that when Martin Luther King received his Nobel Peace Prize in 1964, at that particular time, he was the youngest person to receive a Nobel Peace Prize. How about that? You know what I'm saying? This brother has some accomplishment. I mean, I'm talking about academic, socially, spiritually, culturally. This brother has some serious, I would say, street cred. He has serious street cred because he was getting things done. And also, with that, some of his friends you might be familiar with. He was good friends with Elijah Muhammad. He was good friends with Malcolm X. I know they had their rivalry. I know they had Malcolm had a distaste for the philosophy, but Malcolm grew to understand and grew to love King for who he was. And they had conversations, and they would meet. He was also good friends with Muhammad Ali and also with Farrakhan. So, even though the brothers had different ideologies and had different methods of doing things, they were able to sit down and communicate with each other and talk with each other like we all should be able to do. They were able to set those things aside because, listen, anytime that any person puts themselves on the line for the benefit of people, of us, these cats, women, men, they put themselves out there. They put themselves out there not for just their benefit, but they put themselves out there for the benefit of millions of black people, so that millions of black people, men, women, and children, can live in a equality, that can have justice. He put himself out there, and that's not easy to do, because sometimes we can be our own enemy also when people come to our aid. And I used to when I was younger, thought about Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson, and I was following what people was calling them ambulance chasers, and then I realized that no matter what you think of them, no matter what you think of their philosophy or policy, if they out and they're trying to benefit us, hey, they got flaws, everybody got those. But if they're out trying to do something to benefit the movement, the forward movement of black people, I think those are the things we should look at. And King definitely was 100% in for the benefit of black people. This brother had one of the highest convictions I know, that I've read about, when the FBI up under J. Edgar Hoover, this COINTEL program they was running, which is a counterintelligence program, that they had under surveillance 4 people who they had on their list that may be the Messiah. They said the Messiah, they was looking for the Messiah to come through to electrify the people. And they had Elijah Muhammad, Malcolm X, Martin King, and Stokely Carmichael, which now named his brother Kwame Ture. And they had those on the list that could be the messiahs. So at this point, they sent King a letter telling him to commit suicide along with this tape where they had recorded. Basically, I know you guys have heard about the extramatter affair or the affairs that he had on the road. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't, we don't know. But Hoover, they sent him over a tape and they told him that if he didn't stop what he was doing and told him to commit suicide, that they was going to release the tapes to Coretta. And Brother Martin, in his Martin voice, he said, well, you go on and do what you got to do, because I'm going to keep on doing what I got to do. Now, that's a man for the people. This man was of high moral standards. Man, it's just, wow. Just to think about, the brother was only 39 years old when he was assassinated. And, Brother King, he comes from the church. So he picked up the stance of nonviolence, which he kind of saw Mahatma Gandhi doing over in India, and he was familiar with his works. But if only our brother had known how racist Gandhi was when Gandhi was in Africa. And I don't know if that would have made a difference about the nonviolence stand, but because of the fact we didn't have emails, or we weren't able to communicate like we communicate today, there wasn't no Twitter, or you couldn't send a text. So there was a lot of information that you didn't know about people. And I don't know if he would admire him the way he admired him if he knew Gandhi was racist. Gandhi had a disdain for African people. I mean, he couldn't stand African people. When he lived in South Africa, he was always trying to prove that the Indian people were better than the African people. One of the stories I heard about this cat is there was these doors where the Africans went through and the white South Africans went through. And Gandhi petitioned the Parliament of the court to have another door, because at that time they had to go through the door where the Africans go through, and they didn't want to be categorized with them, so they petitioned for a third door, and they got it. So, like I said, I don't know if that made a difference in the tactic that he used, but I just want to throw that history about Gandhi. A lot of people don't know, but there's a lot of information out there about it. There's a lot of people who were there with him, that was privy to knowing how he felt about us. But anyway, I just want to get that information on record. But our brother, the works that he did, his birthday celebration is coming up. We understand that he was born, on the 15th of January, 1929. And like I said, the brother was brilliant. The brother was able to accomplish things at such a young age. But it just seemed like tragedy followed our brother. Back in 1958, he was in Harlem, and one of the first attempts that somebody trying to kill him was this crazy lady named Izola Ware Curry. Izola Ware Curry. Remember that name. She stabbed Brother King in his chest, almost killing him. The doctor said that if he was to sneeze hard, that he could have died. That's how close he was to death. And he stayed in the hospital for a good while and went through some delicate surgery to repair him. And we're glad he survived and went on to do the works that he did. And like I said, I know you guys are familiar with the works that he did. And this is the thing. It wasn't just Brother King. The Brother King come from a family of freedom fighters. When we go back and look at the history, we look at, and Brother King was killed in, I think it was April the 4th, 1968. And they say, James Earl Ray was the lone shooter. Well, we understand that James Earl Ray wasn't a shooter at all. And we're going to give you some more info on that in just a few minutes. But, not just with his death in April, in July 21st, 1969, his brother, he had a baby brother that was found in his pool in a fetal position with wounds to his head and wounds to his neck. And now his daughter, his name was A.D. King, and his daughter said that the day before she heard him on the phone talking to someone, saying that I know they killed my brother. I'm gonna find out. He said, I'm gonna find out who killed my brother. He said, I'm gonna find out who killed my brother. And the next day, and they said the brother was an avid swimmer. He said he was a great swimmer. And when they pulled him out of the pool, he had no water in his lungs. So it was like he was killed and put in the pool to make it look like an accident. And also, in 1974, Dr. King's mother was shot inside Ebenezer Baptist Church, the same church where her daddy founded and preached, where her husband preached, where her son preached. She was inside playing the organ, and she was shot and killed inside the church. I mean, like I said, the King family was a bunch of freedom fighters. I mean, and you can tell where Brother King get his, tenacity from, and where his inspiration come from, because his whole family were part of the civil rights movement. His brother was also a reverend, and they put themselves on the line, and they paid the ultimate price. They paid their life. We don't know. Like, they don't know exactly. They say the person who killed his mother was crazy. They not, nobody ever found out what happened to his brother. And, what I want to say here is, I want to say, to Brother King, your energy lives on, and that we love you for what you did. We love you for putting yourself on the line for us, and we don't see these kind of people a whole lot no more. But we want to say happy birthday to you, or happy Earth Day to you, Brother Dr. Martin Michael Luther King. And there's some rumors there's a lot of information out about a civil case that the King family was in back in, I think, 1998. And it kind of showed that the federal government was culpable of the killing Brother King, because at one point Brother King started speaking differently. At one point Brother King started understanding differently, and at one point Brother King was getting sick and tired of being sick and tired, and the powers that be didn't like the direction he was going. So I'm going to leave this with Brother Judge Joe Brown. I know some of you should know who he is. He's very outspoken, but he can shed a lot of light into what I'm speaking of, because he was involved in the case. And I think you're going to be surprised to hear what he has to say about the assassination that James Earl Ray didn't do. But we want to say happy Earth Day to Brother King. We want to say that we love you, Brother King. We appreciate what you did for us, for then, and for now, and forever. And I'm out. I'm going to leave you with the words of Judge Joe Brown. Hotel.
I wound up being the last judge hearing the James Earl Ray matter. Did he in fact assassinate Dr. Martin Luther King? And had he not died, and his local attorney not died in close succession, it would have been my finding that he was not the gunman. That Remington 760 Game Master they've got in the Civil Rights Museum is not the murder weapon. It's not even close. And it was a two-man hit team that killed him from the fire station dormitory. It wasn't the flop house, and it wasn't in those bushes. So, yeah, I got into the deep details of Dr. King, and that 3 or 4 year period, that case was kicking around in front of me.
So you're saying that the James Earl Ray did not kill Martin Luther King?
No, he didn't kill.
Even though most people, well, he was convicted for
him.
it, right?
He didn't kill him. It's interesting, the homicide file for the Memphis Police Department reaches the same conclusion back in 1968. They entered their file in protest to the DA's office. Their conclusion was Ray is not the gunman. He was not even in Memphis that day. We know conclusively where he was.
So why do you think he got convicted for the murder?
Well, he didn't get convicted. He pled guilty. You have to understand, though the news media puts it out as he was the self-confessed killer of King, that's not true. All through the transcripts, the entirety of the record, he never confessed, and often he said, I never said I killed King. I didn't kill him. I'm pleading cause of Alford. That's A-L-F-O-R-D. It's a moderately old U.S. Supreme Court case, and it says, even if you are not actually guilty and you are pristinely innocent, you may plead guilty to the charge if you think that doing so is in your best interest under all of the circumstances as you know them to be, and you're doing so freely, voluntarily, understandingly, knowingly, advisedly, and intelligently. So Ray had gone through all of these and had lost, but there was something that came up. Modern scientific methodology took away one further necessary element. All of these things had to be there, and the state had to have a reasonable factual basis upon which to proceed otherwise. The thing the state relied upon was the rifle, but modern scientific methodology excluded that rifle from being the murder weapon. The bullet they pull out of King's body has a rate of rifling twist of 1 turn in every 11 1/4 inches. The rifle that Ray had a rate of rifling twist of 1 turn in every 10 inches and a bad manufacturing defect that is not apparent on the death slug. He was shot with an XM-21. It's a 7.62 by 51 millimeter NATO caliber weapon with a special stainless steel barrel, a 3-9 telescopic sight modified by a company known as Leatherwood. It was a Redfield sight, and they used special subsonic ammunition with a suppressor on the end to reduce the velocity of the bullet to below supersonic to confuse the sound signature. The shot came from the dormitory in the fire station through a window that had been slightly parted. They were several feet inside. It was a 2-man team, a spotter and a shooter. That's what he got killed by. If you shoot somebody at that close a range, which was about 50, 60 yards, with a 30 caliber rifle anywhere in the torso, if the individual is standing next to an emergency room, it's a non-survivable wound. But what they did is they took a head shot they almost missed because the bullet was reduced in velocity. It hit King on the right cheek, took out some molars, wrecked his tongue, came out between his jaws, left the body, hit his clavicle, ricocheted under the skin that covered the clavicle, nicked his carotid artery, went over his right shoulder, down across the back and lodged between the left scapula and his back skin. And the bullet never penetrated his thorax. Now that sounds a little weird, but it's not uncommon. So he bled out from the nicked carotid artery and they almost missed the shot. And Ray was nowhere around.
So had he lived, you would have actually found James Earl Ray not guilty and released him from prison?
Well, it would have been close. he had another involvement in this whole thing, and that was that he was a willing part of what amounted to a conspiracy. He was one of about 4 or 5 alternative scapegoats, and they picked him for a number of reasons. I did talk to a Captain Tommy Smith, who retired as head of homicide for the Memphis Police Department, who was the first detective on the scene. He said the shot couldn't have been from the flop house because there was a window that he was supposed to have fired the shot out of, and who told me that I never found out. He said, but there was a limb about this thick growing diagonally through the window, and you couldn't even see the Lorraine Motel from that location. He said, I came back with crime scene in about an hour, and the whole tree had been cut down, and I found out there was a cut down order sent out to the sanitation department early that day, but they were on strike, so they weren't going to cut it down. So, you know, it gets back to the show. We're going to start bringing some reality back to television that's not the kind of dysfunctional reality that's so popular these days. We're going to start, you should have gotten this in the 4th, 5th, or 6th grade. You didn't. I know you didn't, but here's what the rule is, and let's see if you can become good Americans because of it. Be brave, be honorable, be forthright, stand up, be counted. See, I always said something bad about this so-called international war on terror. This is just an interesting thing that I did. I said, we live in the land of the free and the home of the brave. What are we supposed to be so terrified for? Hundreds of thousands of Americans have been injured or died trying to secure freedom and liberty. So we're going to give it up because we got slightly scared? Be brave. Stand up.
So let freedom ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring, and when this happens, and when we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.